You're 26 years old, sitting at a dinner table with your mother, and somehow, without anyone deciding it out loud, you're the one asking if she's eaten today, not the other way around. You're checking her tone before she's even spoken. You're already calculating what kind of night this is going to be, based on how she closed the front door. And some part of you, a part you've never said out loud, thinks, this is just what being a daughter feels like. It isn't. This is the story of what happens when a child becomes the parent quietly, slowly, with nobody ever announcing the trade. And by the end of this video, you might realize you've been carrying a job description you never agreed to. Let's start with the scene that started it all. You don't remember being told. There was no conversation, no contract. Just a moment maybe you were 7, maybe 10 when your mother cried in the kitchen and looked at you like you were the only one in the room who could fix it. So you did what made sense to a child who loves their parent. You fixed it. You said the right thing. You hugged her at the right time. You learned in that exact moment that your job was to manage her feelings. And once you learned that lesson, you never stopped applying it. This is called parentification, when a child takes on the emotional, and sometimes practical, role of a parent. Not because they were forced at gunpoint, but because somebody needed to hold the house together, and the adults in the room weren't doing it. So a child did. Here's the part that explains everything else. A child's brain doesn't think this is unfair. A child's brain thinks this is normal, because a child has nothing to compare it to. You didn't know other kids weren't checking their mother's mood before walking into the living room. You thought every house worked like this: quiet footsteps, careful words, constant scanning. You weren't dramatic. You were adapting. An adaptation, when it happens early enough, doesn't feel like a wound. It feels like a personality. Let's talk about what this actually looked like, because it rarely looks like neglect from the outside. It looks like a mature kid, a responsible kid. The kid teachers loved because they never caused problems. Sign 1. You were the mediator. When your parents fought, you were the one in the hallway, listening, calculating who needed defending. You learned to read a room the way other kids learn to read books fast, and out of necessity. Sign 2. You became the emotional translator. Mom's not mad at you. She's just tired. You said this to siblings, to friends, to yourself, at an age when you should have been the one needing translation. Sign 3. You skipped being comforted. When you cried, somehow the conversation always turned back to your parents' pain. So you stopped bringing yours. Not because you didn't have any, because there was never room for it. Sign 4. You became hyper-competent, fast. Cooking, managing money, handling logistics, skills you picked up not from curiosity, but from necessity. While other kids were learning to ride bikes, you were learning to keep a household from falling apart. Sign 5. You can't ask for help even now. Asking for help means someone has to give it to you. And somewhere along the way, you learned that nobody was reliably available to give. So you stopped asking. You just do it yourself, every time, even when it's exhausting. Sign 6. You feel responsible for adults' emotions, even strangers. A tense silence in a room. A coworker who seems off. You scan for it instantly, automatically, because that scanning kept your household safe once. It doesn't know how to turn off. Sign 7. And this is the one most people miss: you don't know what you actually want. Because wanting things requires a kind of self-focus you were never allowed to practice. You got so good at reading other people's needs that your own went quiet. Not gone, just quiet. Buried under 20 years of always asking, what does everyone else need right now? Here's a memory that might sound familiar. You're 16, and your friend is venting about her parents being annoying. And you nod along, but inside you're thinking, I would have given anything for my biggest problem to be a curfew. You didn't say it. You just felt, quietly, like you were a different species of teenager. Older somehow. Tired in a way your friends weren't. That tiredness wasn't a personality trait. It was the weight of a job nobody hired you for, that you never got to quit. Now, here's the twist, the part that reframes everything. The skills that came from this, the hyper-awareness, the competence, the ability to hold a room together, they made you exceptional at managing everyone except yourself. You can sense a friend's bad mood from a text message. You can de-escalate a tense meeting at work without anyone noticing you did it. You are, by any measure, remarkably good at taking care of people. And you have almost no practice taking care of you. Because the role you were given as a child never had an off switch installed. Nobody taught you how to stop scanning once the danger passed. Nobody taught you that being loved doesn't require constant management. So you carried the job into every relationship since quietly auditioning to be needed, because being needed was the only love you knew how to receive. If any of this sounds like your life, here's the thing worth sitting with. You didn't fail at being a child. You were never given the chance to be one. The maturity people praised you for wasn't growth, it was survival, dressed up as a compliment. And the work now isn't to become more responsible, more capable, more in control. You've already mastered that. The actual work is learning to put the job down, to let a room be tense without fixing it, to let someone else worry, for once, while you just exist in the moment without managing it. You were never supposed to be the parent. You were supposed to be the kid who got to be taken care of. It's not too late to learn what that feels like.